and welcome to the FI Newscast, where we bring you relevant news in the food and beverage industry. Today is Friday, March 31st, 2023. We have a great show for you today. Our special guest is Kelly Springer, CEO of Kelly's Choice, a nutritional consulting company. It's going to be a great chat. But first, we're going to cover some of the top stories from this week that we think are worth a second look. We start off with the latest GDP numbers, which show a downward trend. The Bureau of Economic Analysis had the growth rate of the gross domestic product at 2.6% in the fourth quarter of 2022, down from the previous quarter's 3.2%. Reasons for the decrease include weakened consumer spending and a decline in import and export activity. In comparison, 2021 GDP growth was at nearly 6%, coming off of a reopening of society after the pandemic. Overall, the economy grew by about 2% for the entire year of 2022, a year plagued with recession concerns, inflation, and consistent interest rate rises. In earnings news, good news for the McCormick & Company. The spice and seasonings manufacturer saw their sales rising by 3% in the first quarter of fiscal year 2023 compared to the same period last year. Chairman and CEO Lawrence Kurzius cited strong global performance and normalization of retail inventory levels as big reasons for the success. Mr. Kurzius reaffirmed continued growth for the company's outlook this year. Walgreens Boots Alliance celebrated similar results. Their second quarter sales increased 3.3% year over year. A rise in pharmacy sales and a solid performance abroad were likely contributing factors to the results as stores resumed normal pharmacy hours, boosting prescription volumes. Moving overseas, the UK food sector is facing double trouble. Not only did grocery inflation rise by a record 17.5% this month, but additional food shortages could put even more pressure on prices. Due to lackluster supplies from overseas sources, tomatoes, cucumbers, and peppers have been in short supply for weeks. Imports became more expensive due to underperformance of the British pound. The Bank of England has stated they expect inflation to go down to 4% by the end of the year, but a recent Delta poll has Britons expecting rates to be closer to 10%. And finally, lab-grown meat reaches prehistoric proportions. Australian company 𝗟𝗏 has recently unveiled a meatball made up of mammoth meat. That's right, as in the woolly mammoth. 𝗟𝗏 is a cultured meat company that aims to separate itself from others in the sector by using cells from unique species and thus help society become less dependent on traditional sources of meat. 𝗟𝗏 has already been experimenting with DNA of other animals such as buffaloes, crocodiles, and peacocks. Since its unveiling, the meatball has been gifted to a museum in the Netherlands. And maybe I'll be looking into flights. And those are your top stories. We're going to turn now to our next segment featuring our special guest for today. She is the CEO of Kelly's Choice, a nutritional consultation program which provides expert dietetic guidance and insight on the corporate and individual level. She has experience working with hospitals, schools, and food service companies for almost 2 decades. She is here today to share her expertise and observations on health and wellness in the food industry. Her name is Kelly Springer. Kelly, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much. I love learning about the mammoth meatball.
I was just going to ask you, what do you think, Kelly? You think that that could become part of the daily diet?
That's hilarious.
You think you might be brave enough to try it?
You know, I want to see what's going on with that. I want to see more of the ingredients and what is going into that mammoth meatball. But yes, I'm willing to try basically anything.
Exactly. I agree with that sentiment. Let's try anything once. All right. Well, thanks so much, Kelly, again for joining us. Let's just jump right into it. I want to talk about the consumer. From your experience, I mean, you've worked in the health and wellness space for almost 2 decades. Tell me, what has your view been on the consumer? Where has the consumer been in the past and where is the consumer now?
It's interesting. I think that we have a split here. I think we have the consumer that is really concerned about their health and some that still have not had any nutrition education. So we're seeing both sides in our company in private practice. We're working with these different people that really truly need the education and some that are like, I'm full in, I'm doing triathlons, I'm eating all the healthiest foods. So we definitely have the split.
When you think of the experience you've had working with large food service companies like Sodexo, I know you've had experience working with them from our previous conversations. You know, they work a lot with colleges and universities. You know, in that level, what have you been seeing on the ground in terms of when it comes to demand? What the students want, what staffers want, what people working, as well as attending these campuses, what are their needs, what are their demands? What has that been like for you working in that health and wellness context?
It's been interesting. So I started working with 𝗟𝗏𝘁 in 2010. I did my internship to get my registered dietitian degree through 𝗟𝗏𝘁. And I was able to work in the different campuses, and seeing back then, it was very different, honestly. I think that there wasn't a lot of push on plant-based. That is very new. A lot of the allergens, they had just started with simple servings at that time, and looking at the food allergens of how those were coming up and people with celiac disease and special needs in the food industry. Now I'm working with American Dining Creations and seeing across their work sites and also in the colleges of how that's really coming to light. A lot of the pitches, those organizations are looking for more plant-based foods and more options. And so they're looking for those choices, because of course we still want to be able to have the pizza and the French fries, but we're seeing that more of those students and more of those employees are looking for those healthier options.
In terms of actual execution with food service companies, seeing those demands, have these companies, from your view or even from your own work with these large-scale companies, how have they been able to deliver on these new and up-and-coming health and wellness demands beyond the average salad bar or steamed vegetable option or regular traditional kind of vegetarian option? What have you been seeing from that respect?
I think that these food companies are truly looking to dietitians to help with this, because we are there to educate the chefs. We're there to educate the management on how to put these together. Also looking at allergens. So right now we're doing a huge project. We're reviewing 13,000 recipes from one of our food companies that we're working with to go through. Are the ingredients there? Is this something that the consumer is going to want to have? Are the allergens marked? So we're re-looking at all of those different aspects to see if we can bring to light and have that pitch be better when they go to pitch for that college or that work site.
Another question I want to ask, in your experience working with companies, especially in light of what's going on in the current economy, we've got inflation, we've got continued fallout from the banking crisis, interest rates have been rising again and again. It's been making companies that we've been reporting on, various companies, very reticent on outlooks, economic outlooks in their own performance. Companies like Target, Walmart, and the like. Have you seen from where you are, food service companies, have they become reticent on spending when it comes to health and wellness choices, or has it not prevented them from focusing on the health and wellness goals that they want to achieve?
That's a hard one. The food cost is a real cost, and a lot of these organizations have a very tight margin. So they do have to look at the cost. They do have to see what is in season, if they can make cuts wherever they can. I think, getting into, I just had a conversation the other day with a large frozen food company, and maybe going in that direction where we can get things, in the frozen section, and making them, taste great with herbs and spices. And so looking at this in a more strategic way of, how can we look at grains and making sure we have whole grains, but getting a better price point. So it's really interesting right now of the cost of food and how it truly is affecting the choices that they're going to have on that tray.
Raising some very good points there. All right, we're going to take a quick commercial break, but when we come back, we'll have much more insights from Kelly Springer, CEO of Kelly's Choice. Stay with us. right, we are back with Kelly Springer, CEO of Kelly's Choice, having a great conversation about health and wellness in the food space. Kelly, I want to ask you, our audience, our demographic is mostly made up of businesses, C-level executives, restaurateurs, entrepreneurs. And I want to ask you, in that perspective, let's say there is a company out there that's watching right now, there is a business person watching right now, and they know that they have to address health and wellness. They have to address the trend. People want to be healthier. They want to make better choices, and they want to incorporate that into their strategy. What advice would you give to businesses, companies, even heads of schools, anyone that is in the business of food and they do want to provide a more nutritional strategy within their line of work? But maybe they don't know the first steps to take. What advice would you give?
Well, I would say contact me directly. So you really can go to 𝗟𝗲𝘁'𝘀 We are a consulting company, and we help you wherever you are, like where your needs are, where are your pain points, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to get the food that you're giving your employees? Are you trying to change that? And we can work with your food system depending on what that is. Are you looking for private practice? Do you want your employees to have access to registered dietitians? What are you looking for, and where do you want to start? I think people get a little overwhelmed in the wellness space, and there's a lot of things out there. And that's why we're very targeted in the way of really focusing on nutrition education and giving the best and the most up-to-date research-based nutrition education that we can, and also making it fun and exciting for people.
Great. So really, bottom line, you have to figure out, really it benefits the company to seek that outside guidance, which they can find from you. But really figuring out, right, what they want, what they want to target in terms of providing those healthier options. That's a very good point. I also want to ask, what we've talked about before about the economic impact, potential economic impact on health and wellness. What about other challenges that you believe the health and wellness space is facing, that food service companies, other large-scale companies, when it comes to health and wellness, that they have to tackle? What have you been seeing when it comes to those challenges?
Well, we really work in the chronic prevention space. And I think that, some of these numbers that have come to light, like if you go to the CDC, you'll see that having just one type 2 diabetic on your team can cost that organization over $12,000. So as we see these costs go up with food, we are also seeing that increase in insurance claims and also that loss of productivity. So it's really important to make sure that we are targeting those chronic diseases and helping the dietitians to work with those employees to bring down those numbers. So there's just amazing things that we can do to have targeted nutrition education to truly help bring down A1Cs, cholesterol, blood pressure, because 80% of our chronic diseases can be prevented through nutrition education, which is amazing.
That's pretty, those numbers are pretty astounding right there. I want to turn now to, we've just talked about challenges, but what are some successes that you've seen either from your own work or examples that you've seen from the industry at large when it comes to health and wellness and food service being able to execute on large scale, health and wellness strategy? For example, I think 𝗂𝗏 is a brand that produces, very healthy options that seems to be successful. What are some other examples that maybe you feel proud of, as a nutritionist, as a professional, in the health and wellness space?
Well, I think when organizations start to look at what they were serving, and with working with a registered dietitian, we can make a lot of changes. For instance, I'm working with Madison County Jail, and you'd say, like, what is she doing there? Well, we actually changed the menus over to have more whole grains that include more fiber and vegetables. And we've been able to see over a 3-year period, they haven't had any grievances. So what does that mean? Well, every time they have a grievance, they have to hire a dietitian to come in, and that's costing them more money. Plus, we've stabled out their blood sugar levels by changing over the food system. And so we're able to see less fights, less of medication going to mental health issues, and also to like diabetes and heart disease. So it's amazing, just making small changes, even to a jail menu, can have such a huge impact.
That is an amazing anecdote. Thank you for sharing that, Kelly. Really encouraging news to hear how your food choices can really make a difference in no matter what context. That's great. All right,
Absolutely.
Kelly Springer. Yes, thank you. Kelly Springer, CEO of Kelly's Choice. Thank you so much, Kelly, for joining us. That was really
Thank you
informative.
very much for having me.
Before we go, we're going to take a look at what's ahead in the food industry in the coming days. On April 5th, Conagra releases its earnings for Q3 of fiscal year 2023. And also on April 5th, health food giant Simply Good Foods releases its results for Q2 of 2023. And on April 7th, the Bureau of Labor Statistics comes out with latest data results on U.S. employment. And that is our show. Thanks so much for joining us. Special thanks to Kelly Springer, CEO of Kelly's Choice. Please tune in next week, same time, same place, when our guest will be 𝗟𝗶𝗱𝗲 of Bloomberg. She's going to give us all her expertise on what she is seeing in the food and beverage industry from a finance perspective. Don't miss that. Also next Tuesday at noon Eastern Time, April 4th, will be a special episode of our live stream show, FI Live, where we will chat with Marco Salazar of the Adult Non-Alcoholic Beverage Association. Two great shows you don't want to miss. Until then, have a great weekend and take care.